Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a radically inclusive community of faith and non-faith, where no matter who you are, what you look like, whether you're black, white, male or female, straight, bi, gay, transgender, cisgender, able-bodied or otherwise, you are welcome. If this is your first time attending New Unity, and a special welcome to you. However, if you've been here before, once again you'll have noticed that Andy unfortunately is not here, so he's asked me to take over. And of course my incredibly confident demeanour is really betraying how terrifying I am. Once again, you almost make it seem like it's a full-time job, which apparently it is. I can only once again offer my thanks to Andy for putting his trust in me. The title of today's sermon is Relationship Makes Us What We Are. And the reason I wanted to go along with this title is because it reminded me a lot of the idea of Ubuntu, which, other than the software package, is a South African philosophy that quite literally means I am because we are. And I thought that had particular pertinence at this time of year, because on Tuesday, the 1st of December, is the 27th year of World AIDS Day. It's the same age as I am, and while I'd be lying if I said I was personally affected by HIV/AIDS, a very large number of my friends are, and it's a very, very personal cause, which is why I wanted to center the sermon around it. You'll notice very quickly, though, that unlike the front of your order of service, I am not wearing a red ribbon. And I'm really bothered by the fact that I wasn't able to find one. Given the unbelievable proliferation of other symbolic symbols that you can offer to show that you are thinking of somebody or thinking of a particular event that day, somehow I found it really hard to even find a World AIDS Day ribbon. I mean, the only way apparently to do it was to do it online, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get my one on time. And when thinking about what relationships are and how they make us who we are, I can't help but wonder what it says about us when we consider certain things worth remembering and certain things not worth remembering, to the extent where we get chastised for being accused of not remembering something just by the mere symbology. It is true that relationship makes us what we are, but history offers too many examples of showing us how we can define ourselves even more by the relationships that we refuse to engage in. The demonization, the repression, the denial, the stigma, the Jew, the leper, the Roma, the slave. There are far too many examples in history where how we have rejected other people has defined us more than who we have embraced. And I'd like to think of relationships as something positive rather than something negative. I'd like to be able to look inside ourselves and think we are made up of love and beauty and happiness. And that's what World AIDS Day is all about. It's not about focusing on this closing moment of the 20th century that claimed 20 million lives around the world. It's about looking at the interdependencies and how we need to imbue that interdependence with love and not with hatred. I believe it's now time for all pictures. Or if I may have completely wrong thing there. Let me have my order starts. No, it's not! We are going to sing a lovely hymn. That's what we're going to do. So if you can rise, if you are able, the lyrics should be on your person. We're going to sing McCartney and Lennon's Let It Be. John's going to help me out with this because I'm musically inept. And that's it! I feel like this is great.
So which that's the preamble words, yes?
Standing right
the children to please come to the front for time for ages.
Hey, I saw that.
Not quite. I think you'll find there'll be more people coming to join us.
In 10 seconds, I bet.
I think. Okay, you get up.
Have you already voted? Just tell them they already been voted. Just please tell them.
Looks like.
Okay, here we
Ada, come over here, please.
We'll just get ready, sorry. When I first saw the thing you get through about what the service is all about and that stuff, and when I first saw is it I am because we are? When I first saw that, the first thing that came to my mind was one of my favourite poems from when I was a little girl, which was about a boy. I'm not even sure it actually says boy, but I think it's Christopher Robin, and his best friend Winnie the Pooh. So, I'm just going to read a couple of verses because it's quite long. So, and I'm sorry I'm reading off my phone, I didn't manage to memorize it again. So, wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh in me. Whatever I do, he wants to do. Where are you going today, says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, because I was too. Let's go together, said Pooh, says he. Let's go together, said Pooh. What's twice 11? I said to Pooh. Twice what? Said Pooh to me. I think it ought to be 22. Just what I think myself, said Pooh. It wasn't an easy sum to do, but that's what it is, said Pooh, said he. That's what it is, said Pooh. So, that's okay. Thank you very much. You don't reconnect, it's a very long one. You can put that in, bring it up.
Or leave it.
This is an excerpt from Nelson Mandela's closing speech at the 13th International AIDS Conference. Then I said to him, the important thing is that you are alive. You have the security of having two parents who love you. You're a very bright, intelligent youngster. Don't think you will leave your family, your beloved, your people, your country under a cloud of shame. You must be determined that you will disappear under a cloud of glory, and I quoted to him a verse which I often repeat, especially when I'm faced with the situation of having to say goodbye to somebody. Gods died many times before the death. The valiant never tasted death but once. Of all the wonders I yet have seen it, it seems most strange that men should fear seeing that death, a necessary act with death when it comes. That was Shakespeare, and everyone who listens to those words disappears in their cloud of glory, becomes a worthy candidate for immortality. We want to move away from rhetoric to practical action. As I said earlier this morning, we want men and women who can penetrate the exterior and appreciate the beauty inside every human being. We need, and there is increasing evidence of, African resolve to fight this war. Others will not save us if we do not primarily commit ourselves. Let us, however, not underestimate the resources required to conduct this battle. Partnership with the international community is vital. A constant theme in all our messages has been that in this interdependent and globalized world, we have indeed again become the keepers of a brother and sister.
Real love isn't ambivalent. I'd swear, that's a line from my favorite best-selling paperback novel, In Love with the Night Mysterious, except I don't think you've ever read it. Well, you ought to. Instead of spending the rest of your life trying to get through democracy in America, it's about this It's about this white woman whose daddy owns a plantation in the Deep South in the years before the Civil War. And her name's Margaret, and she's in love with her daddy's #1 slave, and his name is Thaddeus. And she's married, but her white slave owner husband has AIDS. Annabella instantly developed sex organs. And so, there's a lot of hot stuff going down. When Margaret and Thaddeus can catch a spare torrid 10 under the cotton-picking moon, and then, of course, the Yankees come, and they set the slaves free, and the slaves string up old daddy, and so on. Historical fiction. Somewhere in there, I recall, Margaret and Thaddeus find the time to discuss the nature of love. Her face is reflecting the flames of the burning plantation. You know, the way white people do. And his black face is dark in the night, and she says to him, Thaddeus, real love isn't ever ambivalent.
Winter is here. Although we have yet to be blessed, or maybe cursed, with thick blankets of white snow, there's no mistaking that with December a mere 2 days away, 2015 is now taking her bow. There's something uncannily quiet about this moment in the year. Locked between the riotous consumer panic and cultural eccentricities of Thanksgiving, Halloween, Diwali, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's Day, and of course the most important holiday of all, Black Friday. It's as if the year itself, stunned by a few days of relative silence, is taking a single final breath before plunging back into the maelstrom. Perhaps it's little surprise then that 27 years ago, journalists and WHO information officers James Bunn and Thomas Netter thought that no other time of the year could better serve as a moment of remembrance for the millions lost to the epidemic that defined the dying breaths of the 20th century. Most of us here are already familiar with some of the names, phrases, and figures that have punctuated the AIDS pandemic since the height of the crisis at the close of the last millennium. The stories of Guyton Dugas, Ryan White, and Freddie Mercury have effortlessly folded into the annals of our cultural history, alongside the competing mythologies surrounding AZT, the National Institutes of Health, and Ronald Reagan himself. HIV/AIDS has the unique attribute of being a disease of both affluence and destitution, wreaking havoc in both Soweto and San Francisco, whilst tainting those interpersonal activities that to different groups represented liberation, love, pleasure, or sin. In this sense, the pandemic is best remembered as a cultural and social rather than pathological phenomenon, and one which need not be forgotten in a time when those who suffer from HIV today are increasingly absent from the glare of the mainstream spotlight. Our second reading was from Tony Kushner's highly acclaimed play Angels in America, wherein Belize, a working-class African-American gay man, having listened to Lewis's borderline racist tirade ostensibly in defense of American democracy, refers to his favorite novel, drawing a direct parallel between Margaret's simplistic idea of love with Lewis's fantasy of unity. As a nurse in 1980s New York City, Belize confronts the reality of HIV/AIDS on a daily basis, seeing dozens of gay men, young and old, suffering and dying under the weight of a disease that the establishment wholly either ignores or neglects. His first-hand understanding of the tremendous divisive power of AIDS and his own experience of intersectional discrimination leads him to reject the possibility of a classless, race-lined gay identity which all men under the LGBTQ spectrum can subscribe to, in the same way that Thaddeus ultimately rejects Margaret's simplistic idea of an interracial romance that can conveniently ignore inequities of class, wealth, and power. Our current theme here at New Unity is interdependence. And over the last few months, Andy has highlighted the infinitely complex connectome linking person, to animal, to earth, and to universe. In many respects, these relationships can be beautiful. And while perhaps there is a certain mathematical elegance inherent to the matrix of extant connections, much like the other physical laws that govern our universe, these links are ultimately amoral. They are facts unto which we can extract fortunes good and ill. And what Belize understands is how a disease as potent and personal as AIDS, or as entrenched and wholesale as slavery, can strengthen the interdependent bonds that perpetuate social inequalities, be they based on race, class, or sexuality. The fact is, here in the West, it can be all too easy to imagine that the crisis is over, with its Western zenith safely preceding the present day by more than 2 decades. Much of the contemporary discussion surrounding HIV in local circles, perhaps even this very sermon, pertains to what can and cannot be learned from the experience of the epidemic. And as such, it's all too easy to forget that for many countries in Southern Africa, and especially South Africa, HIV/AIDS remains a dangerously modern reality, in which both the rates of infection remain disturbingly high and the reverberations since the epidemic's heyday in the 1990s continue to impact the social, economic, and political realities of Johannesburg and Cape Town. Our first reading was from Nelson Mandela's closing speech at the 13th International AIDS Conference in Durban in the year 2000, and at that point over 5 million men and women across South Africa were infected with HIV, making the nation the de facto ground zero of the AIDS pandemic. And here once again, we cannot help but be humbled by the power of our interdependence. Modern communication technologies, faster planes and ocean craft, the removal of trade barriers and tariffs have all had the ultimate effect of shrinking our planet while multiplying the resonance of our international connections. Hence, it is impossible to separate the disaster of structural adjustment programs levied onto South Africa's landlocked neighbours, or the 1973 oil crisis itself resulting from the Arab-Israeli conflict, from the devastating ferocity with which the AIDS epidemic struck Southern Africa. Even from a domestic standpoint, one cannot refer to a specific aspect of South African policy or environment without necessitating analysis of another, be it physical geography, localized gender and sexual norms, or the mass political upheavals following the twilight of apartheid. So it's no small irony then that the same region where HIV inflicted its greatest devastation is also the home of the philosophy known as Ubuntu. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate Nomoya Gaboi transliterates the word as "I am what I am because of who we all are." Ubuntu asserts that it is society itself, rather than a particular transcendent force, be it God or nature, that grants humanity their humanity. Within this phrase is not a mere declaration of interdependence as a benign fact, but a recognition of the enormity of its power, the extent to which our relationships can imbue us with enormous responsibility, and even the wherewithal to transform our lives and our world for better or for worse. And you can see why such a term would appeal to a computer-operated system. Archbishop Desmond Tutu further outlines that a person with Ubuntu is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good, based from a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she belongs in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated or diminished when others are tortured or oppressed. So while Ubuntu may indeed be a warning of the fact of interdependence and the possibility of ugliness and injustice that can result, it is also a call to arms to embrace that most volatile of ideas of eternal interdependence and to mold it in our own image for the sake of love and justice. Nelson Mandela's speech at Durban brought this idea home in the exaltation of the other as brother and sister. And in doing so, interdependence evolves from being about connection to being about family. Bringing this all closer to home, both geographically and personally, I have a close friend who has been living with HIV for 10 years. He's in his mid-40s, meaning that he developed his own sexual consciousness against the terrifying backdrop of HIV/AIDS in the 80s and 90s, when the mere mention of the disease connoted an immediate death sentence. I got around to asking him what was it, more than anything, that scared him about living with HIV. And he told me that despite the side effects that remain part and parcel of antiretroviral treatment, it wasn't the virus doing to his body that bothered him, but the ever-present potential for alienation. He had indeed lost friends, and even lovers, on outing himself as a POS man, noting that even now the hysteria surrounding Charlie Sheen's disclosure hinted at the implacability of others to judge without question, to assume that HIV had a role in karmic distribution. Part of me wishes that he didn't have to feel that kind of shame for something that, at least in the industrial West, is a manageable but a difficult condition. But then he also told me, if anything, his experience of HIV reinforced the wonderful relationships that remained and opened it up to a way of living more mindfully. And it's at that moment that he put his hand out and he put it on mine and he just looked at me. Perhaps the idea, though, is best expressed by a completely opposite example, by the character of Sonmi 451 from David Mitchell's wonderful novel Cloud Atlas. As her universe is crumbling around her and the resistance is failing against the encroaching armies of Neo-Socoporos, she broadcasts to the world a simple message. Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present. And with each crime and every kindness, we birth our future. May it be so. So, if we could stand, if we are able, we are going to go to hymn number 1014.